beginning in verse 1. And the fifth angel blew his trumpet, and I saw a star fallen from heaven to earth. And he was given the key of the shaft of the bottomless pit. He opened the shaft of the bottomless pit, and from the shaft rose smoke like the smoke of a great furnace. And the sun and the air were darkened with the smoke from the shaft. Then from the smoke came locusts on the earth, and they were given power like the power of scorpions of the earth. They were told not to harm the grass of the earth or any green growth or any tree, but only those of mankind who have not the seal of God upon their foreheads. They were allowed to torture them for 5 months, but not to kill them. And their torture was like the torture of a scorpion when it stings a man. And in those days men will seek death and will not find it. They will long to die, and death will fly from them. In appearance the locusts were like horses arrayed for battle. On their heads were what looked like crowns of gold. Their faces were like human faces. Their hair like women's hair, and their teeth like lions' teeth. And they had scales like iron breastplates. And the noise of their wings was like the noise of many chariots with horses rushing into battle. They have tails like scorpions and stings, and their power of hurting men for 5 months lies in their tails. They have as king over them the angel of the bottomless pit. His name in Hebrew is Abaddon, and in Greek he is called Apollyon. Amen. So there's a king, Abaddon. It's an unusual thing in Scripture for the writer to give us a Hebrew name and then translate it also for a Greek name. The Greek name for this king, Apollyon, this is the only time it occurs. However, the Hebrew name Abaddon is used elsewhere in Scripture. It is notably found in Psalm 88. If you're not reading the King James. King James will translate Abaddon to destruction or death when they come to it. There in that psalm, and I almost read it this morning with us, but it is such a depressing psalm. It's not the sort of psalm you want to read in March, when we've already had enough winter and we're already barely lifting ourselves out of the depression. But I would commend it to you, particularly if you are feeling like you alone might be ignored by God. That psalm speaks to that. But in that psalm, Abaddon is referred to as a place, not a person. And it is related to Hades, the place of the dead. And we have now that place name being used as a person's name in the book of Revelation. He is the king of the bottomless pit, the abyss. King of a great big bottomless pit. And from that pit come locusts that are unusual in a couple ways. One is they are told not to eat and destroy any of the grass or the trees, which is different than that plague upon Egypt. When the locusts came, that's what they did. They ate everything that was green. But here they're told not to. Instead, they are given authority to torture people, notably those people who do not have the seal of God upon them. I prefer to have the seal. I have never been stung by a scorpion. I have no idea what that feels like. If it is worse than being stung by a bald-faced hornet, Lord have pity on those poor people that get stung by a scorpion. Those I've contended with. And imagine this, that you are perpetually in a swarm of angry bald-faced hornets for 5 months. And there's no keeping their sting from you. Except if you have a seal of the living God upon you. I think if I had to deal with that pain for 5 months, never relenting, I would reach this spot that those suffering would seek death and not find it. I have not encountered that sort of pain in my life. But I have been with a few who have. When dying is considered a blessing and living a curse. For those few that I've been with, it has been understood by all of us that this was only for a short little while longer, and then death would mercifully come. And when it did, everyone was able to say, although with great grief, it's a blessing that the suffering is over. But here it doesn't end. It goes on and on for 5 months. So what is the seal? There is a mark placed on the forehead of God's believers. That seal is talked about in Romans chapter 4. And that's in the midst of the chapter that Paul is talking about Abraham. And that Abraham had obtained a righteousness through faith before circumcision. But that circumcision was given to him as a sign and a seal of the righteousness that he already had, so that he might be an example to those who are not circumcised and those who are. That Paul will use this very same word of seal as a mark of faith and righteousness. We also know the value of a mark coming from that story that parallels these plagues and problems of the plagues of Egypt. That there is a mark given to God's people there. Not on their foreheads, but on the lintels of their doors. And that was the blood of the Passover lamb. And it was a means of protecting God's people from the angel of death. We find that also in the book of Ezekiel. There comes a time when Ezekiel instructs the prophets to go into the city and to mark on the forehead all of God's people who have not given themselves over to the worship of Baal and other idols. And then all those who are not marked, destroyed. So this mark is a mark of protection. It's a mark that has to do with righteousness and faith. And I can say with great conviction that if you have that faith, and that faith has engendered righteousness in your life, you are sealed by God. And if we are living at this time, we fear not these plagues. But there's a bit more, I think, that's connected to this idea. And that is the idea of it on the forehead. And we find that in the book of Exodus, chapter 28, verse 36, where God is describing the garment that Aaron the high priest is to wear in order to be righteous and holy in the presence of God. And he has a sign on his forehead. It's made of gold and it's applied to lace. And it reads, "Holy unto God." That on his forehead. And that's all this illusion is about, this seal. That it's a seal of righteousness. It's a seal of protection. It's God's name. It's we are set aside as holy unto God. And we live in a time that the locusts haven't descended, but Abaddon is still king. Now, one of the interesting things that we'll find with Abaddon is that the Hebrew word Abaddon is not in that Greek Old Testament translated as Apollyon. Instead, it's translated by a verb, Apollo Umi, which means death or destruction. It's that connection that led us to read the story of the running father of the prodigal son today. Because you see, I don't believe that this concern that we might have about the blowing of this fifth trumpet is only for that time when we hear it sound. That yes, then the bottomless pit is opened, that these locusts come, but still there is this king, Abaddon, the king of death and destruction. And that story in Luke is about that. About living under King Abaddon in our own time. The son takes all that he has and squanders it on loose living. If you've had a misspent youth, you can fill in the blank of what loose living means. And then he begins to deal with consequences. After he's wasted all of his living, he now ends up in a place with a famine, and he has a job feeding the pigs. And it is said, and no one gave him anything. This is where he comes. No one gave him anything. And he is now, having been raised this Jewish child, doing the one thing that no Jew would choose to do. He is staving off starvation by feeding the pigs. It's then that he comes to his senses. And he goes home. But I'm mostly focused on what the Father has to say. This son of mine who was lost and Apolumi, he was dead. See, how does God view this life when we give ourselves over to Abaddon and squander all that He has given to us? He sees it not as, that's a very naughty thing you're doing. See, the gospel of Jesus Christ is not about naughty and nice. It's about life and death. And in the kingdom of Abaddon, we are so confused that we are dead and don't even know it. The life the world says is a good life is death. It's incredible to me how we live with this delusion and denial. I had a funeral for a 40-year-old man who died of cirrhosis of the liver from chronic alcoholism. After his funeral, some of his younger nephews, who admired their uncle, he lived life to the fullest, this guy told me. I said, no, he didn't. He died of cirrhosis, one of the most painful deaths you can imagine. He was a wet brain alcoholic. You couldn't even communicate with that man the last 6 years of his life. Don't tell me that was life in its fullest. How do we arrive at that understanding? It's because we're dead and we don't know it. We are subjects to King Abaddon. It gets worse. There will come a time when the bottomless pit is open, and it'll get worse. But till then, we still contend with that king. The king of the abyss. The king of death and Hades. And we will be destroyed except that we have a seal. of the living God. A seal because He has given us faith and set us on the path to righteousness. A seal that at least God will see is on your forehead. And that when He looks at you, He sees this sign, holy unto God. That's life that Christ came to give us. We are not destined to the pit. Instead, we are holy unto God. We have a King who is so much more powerful than Abaddon. A King who destroys Abaddon and grants us life. But in the meantime, we live among the dead. And they don't know it. We who do, who have been sealed because of faith and righteousness, who have been marked as holy unto God, we must live life in such a way that even the dead will rise again. And see this one sign of hope. That God marks us, and we praise Him, are holy unto God.